In this lesson, I'm going to get more familiar with high-speed counters. In previous lessons, we got to know counters. In PLCs, there are certain counters that can count pulses at high speeds for us, which are commonly referred to as high-speed counters. High-speed counters can perform counting for us in two ways: linear or ring circular mode. One of the most important applications of high-speed counters is with encoders, where they can count the pulses from the encoder for us. In the L series H compact PLCs, the I0 to I7 inputs are related to the high-speed counter. The first four inputs have a frequency of 100 kHz, and the second four inputs have a frequency of 20 kHz. Encoders usually have two phases, which are called phase A and phase B. If we want to use only one phase of the encoder, we can connect up to 8 encoders to the HLS series Compact Programmable Logic Controller, or PLC. But if we want to count both phases of the encoder, we can only connect a total of 4 encoders to the H series Compact PLC. If the high-speed counter is operating in linear mode, it is able to perform counting for us in 3 different ways: up, down, and up, down. Alright, let's go together. Let's do the high-speed counter settings in the XG5000 software. When we enter the XG5000 software environment, in this section, there is the internal parameter. If we click here in the high-speed counter section, a dialog window will open for us, where we can adjust the high-speed counter settings in detail. As we explained earlier, the Compact Series H Programmable Logic Controllers, PLCs, have specifically 8 high-speed counter channels, which are from channel 0 to channel 7. If we want to configure the settings for each of these channels, we can do so through this section. For example, let's configure the settings for channel 0 together. The first setting is the counter mode, which can be in 2 states. It's either in linear mode or ring mode. In linear mode, the counting is done in a straight linear fashion. But in ring mode, we define a specific range for it. Within that range, it counts in a loop for us, and we can specify the minimum and maximum values through this section. If you look at this section, it says ring counter minimum and ring counter maximum. So here we can assign values to it. For example, suppose I leave the minimum value at 0. Let me first set its maximum value as the ring. Alright, for example, we set the maximum value to 1000. It counts for us from 0 to 1000, and when it reaches 1000, it goes back to 0 again. This is related to the ring. The next setting is related to the pulse input mode. As you can see here, our pulse input mode has 4 states. The first mode is single phase, single input, meaning we use one phase of the encoder and connect that phase to one of the inputs of our high-speed counter. Well, since the setting here is for channel 0, we need to connect it to the input corresponding to our channel 0. In this mode, our counter either counts up or counts down. The next mode is single phase dual input. In this particular mode, we use one phase of our encoder and 2 inputs of the high-speed counter. We connect that encoder phase to one of the inputs. If the second input is at 0 volts, it counts up for us, and if it's at 24 volts, it counts down for us. The next mode is CW-CCW. In this mode as well, we use one phase of the encoder and 2 inputs of the PLC's high-speed counter. And as you can see in the image, if we connect the phase to the first input and leave the second input unconnected, it will count up. But if we leave the first input unconnected and send a pulse to the second input, it will count down for us. And the last mode is called 2-phase times 4, where in this particular mode, we use both phases of the encoder, and for each phase, both the rising edge and the falling edge are carefully counted. This mode is actually one of the most precise counting modes we have, and we usually use this mode. The next setting is related to the preset. In the high-speed counter, we can preset in 2 ways. One way is internal or software-based. The second way is external, that is outside the system, or a hardware-based solution. For example, suppose we want to preset a value internally. We can enter the preset value in this section. By presetting, we mean from which value our starting point or initial point begins. For example, if I set this to 100 here and preset internally, our counting will start from 100. In the external mode as well, we can specify the starting point here in the same way to determine from which point our counting should begin. Well, the next section is about comparators or comparison operators, which is a very important part. Normally, in a PLC program, if we want to compare two values with each other, we use comparator functions. But in high-speed counter modes, since our counting speed is high, we can no longer use those comparator functions. For this reason, the PLC itself has conveniently provided a dedicated set of comparators specifically intended for use with high-speed counter modes. We can also configure their detailed settings right here. And an important point is that for each channel, it has provided two comparators which are indicated as mode 0 and mode 1. And as you can see, there are options for less than, or equal to, greater than, or equal to, greater than, and two modes, include and exclude. These relate to the comparator operations where we can specify a value and our pulse count can be compared with these and an output will be activated for us as well. Now regarding these two modes, include and exclude, include means that we specify a range, a minimum value and a maximum value. If our count falls within this range, an output will be activated for us, and exclude means that we consider those same two ranges. We say that if our count does not fall within this range, then one of the outputs will be activated for us. Now, where can we adjust those ranges? Through this section, which is labeled as Compare Minimum and Compare Maximum. And here we have one, Compare 0 Minimum. Compare 0 maximum, compare 1 minimum, and compare 1 maximum, which are related to mode 0 and mode 1. Because we said we have two comparators, now whichever of these we want to configure, we can set its minimum and maximum values through this section. The next setting is related to activating our output, which we said that when the comparison operation is performed, ultimately one of the PLC outputs will be activated for us. Here, we can clearly specify which one of the outputs will be activated and enabled for us. This one is related to mode 0 and this one is related to mode 1. And finally, we have two other settings that are related to RPM settings or revolutions per minute. If we want to calculate the RPM, which stands for revolutions per minute, we can use these two sections to adjust its settings. However, the thing is, we usually specify the RPM settings within the program itself, so there is generally no need to use these two particular settings.